In a recent article with Variety, James Cameron opens up about Avatar Fire and Ash, specifically one scene that was initially not part of the movie. Avatar Theory here, hope you're doing well and having a fantastic day. And the article itself you can find in the description and the pinned comment below, and I highly recommend that you read the entire article because there's a lot of questions about the visual effects, Cameron's production, and he also talks about Ghosts of Hiroshima that he wants to direct. So it's certainly an interesting read for sure, and I'm only going to focus on the questions and answers relating to Avatar, but if you do want essentially a rundown of what the whole article is about, like I said, James Cameron sat down with Variety for a wide-ranging Q&A, and the focus was mostly on Avatar Fire and Ash and what it means for the saga going forward. He explained that he normally doesn't revisit his films once they released, but with The Way of Water being re-released ahead of the third film, he had to break his own rule in order to make sure the tone, music and themes stay consistent. He admits he got sucked into rewatching it and was happy to find that it still works on an emotional level. He gave an update on Fire and Ash, confirming that the visual effects process is entering the final stretch and that he's pushing for what he calls a creative culture in visual effects, encouraging artists to think like storytellers, not just technicians. According to him, this has already led to a smoother, more joyful finish, with many shots being approved as first look finals because the team understands the narrative purpose behind every detail. Cameron also revealed that he actually rewrote and reshot parts of Fire and Ash to bring back the TORUK, realizing that Jake's connection with the great Leonoptrix needed to return as part of his destiny. He described it as a late but essential creative decision that elevated the story. On the character side, he highlighted that Spider, Kiri and Loak will come into full focus in the third film, becoming the emotional glue between all the major relationships. Jake and Neytiri's marriage, meanwhile, will be tested by the grief of losing their son Dem, with Cameron emphasizing he wants to portray that authentically rather than glossing over it like many blockbuster franchises do. He also touched on the future, mentioning his long gestating project Ghosts of Hiroshima, saying he still plans to direct it, but that its timing depends on how Fire and Ash performs financially and whether it makes sense to roll directly into Avatar 4 and 5. He admitted he's at something of a crossroads, balancing massive Avatar productions with the possibility of smaller personal films, but the one certainly is that he won't stop directing or telling stories. Now, like I said, if you do want to read all of the questions and answers yourself, the link to that is in the pinned comment and the description below, but there's essentially 4 or 5 questions I would like to focus on. Firstly, Variety asks, you shot most of the material for The Way of Water and Fire and Ash from 2017 to 2019, right? Cameron replied, yeah, we started September of 2017. We went for 18 months, but we did both movies, all of it, other than some planned reshoots and some places where I got creative and wrote some new scenes. But the vast majority, call it 95%, was shot in that 18-month window. That was Sigourney playing 15-year-old Kiri across both movies, which actually worked great because she's got a story arc across the 2 movies. There was a kind of major story arc where 2 and 3 really tell one big story, and then ultimately, if I get so lucky and I make 4 and 5 tell one big story. So it kind of stops for a beat after the end of 3. I don't mean we'll necessarily stop in production, but the story kind of stops and then it jumps forward in time a little bit. Now, I just want to talk about this because we know that there is going to be a time jump between Avatar 3 and 4. I mean, mean, Cameron has already confirmed in other interviews that he shot a little bit of Avatar 4 just in case, because he needs the kids to be young at the beginning of the movie. So I'm guessing like the first 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes of Avatar 4 has been shot, and then we will likely see a massive time jump. If I had to guess, I would speculate maybe 10 or perhaps 12 years time jump. I mean, there was that small time jump in Avatar The Way of Water, but it was only 1 year. So I do see something along the lines of Avatar 4 having like a 10 or 12 year time jump, because it would make sense age-wise, because Cameron confirmed that most of Avatar 2 and 3 was shot between 2017 and 2019. So if, for example, they start shooting in 2026 or 27, that will be about 10 years apart. So therefore, it would make sense that there's a 10 or 12 year time jump between Avatar 3 and 4, or that little time jump that will be indicated in the movie. But that is, of course, just speculating. The next question, Variety asks, so how that distance affect your relationship to the material? With the kids especially, they're much older now than when you were first filming. Cameron replied, it creates this weird cognitive dissonance where I'm always shocked by how long it's been since we actually captured the moment, because there's a sense of immediacy. I'm in the story, working on the scene. It feels very immediate. I can remember where everybody was standing. I can remember even secondary characters in the background, which of our troop characters played each one of those secondary characters. It feels like I did it last week. It was 5 or 6 years ago. Fortunately, the cast are just as energetic. I just was doing press with them last week. They're just as pumped and passionate about their characters and what we're doing as they ever were, and can't wait to get on the next one, if we should get so lucky as to make some money with these now that are being re-released and being released. So the energy is there, the excitement's still there, but it's a weird cognitive dissonance. Then they asked Cameron, does that dissonance wind up affecting the film? Cameron had a really good response here by saying, the good news is I don't really second guess my creative impulses, unless, and this happened a little bit on Fire and Ash, I'm looking at it going, you know, I'm not that much of a genius screenwriter. There's something a little off here in the storytelling. And so our TORUK is back in Fire and Ash, right? You know, the big bird that Jake rides in the climax of the first Avatar. I've always been waiting for the question, why doesn't he just go and get the big red bird and kill everybody like he used to? Because that doesn't exist in The Way of Water at all. I got a big scoop here. It didn't exist in Avatar Fire and Ash. And I went, oh, he's got to go get the bird. Come on, he was saving it for the later film. I was like, fuck that, he should get the bird, get the TORUK. There's something in Jake's destiny that requires it, right? So I just rewrote it, and we went back and we shot 2 or 3 scenes around that concept, and I threw some stuff out and stuck that in, and we're at 3 hours. Big surprise, but it works beautifully, and the actors were super excited about that idea. It's like, oh, okay, that feels right, you know? So it's not set in stone, it's constantly evolving creative process, and that's what keeps you vigorous and engaged. So here Cameron says that the return of TORUK was not initially planned, so I do wonder where and when he decided to make that change. I do wonder what was the initial plan then, and I do hope at some point behind the scenes or in some interviews he talks about what he was planning before that, because he does say here that TORUK was planned for later films, so I do wonder what he swapped around and why he made that change. I mean, I'm happy to see TORUK back, but I do wonder what was the initial plan. Cameron then continues to talk about The Way of Water, about Neteyam's death and how that affects Jake and Neytiri. And as mentioned, I really recommend you read the full article because it is very, very interesting. And the fact that Cameron is doing these press interviews, I mean, I believe this is the first in detail interview about Avatar Fire and Ash that we got outside of Empire magazine. And with Cameron confirming that he's doing press with the actors, I mean, mostly they've been doing press for Avatar The Way of Water, the re-release. They will likely start doing press for Avatar Fire and Ash, and then we will get a lot of interviews, a lot of information, possibly, hopefully another trailer, and probably some clips and snippets from the movie itself. But what do you think about this article, and what do you think about the return of TORUK? Do you think it was a good idea to bring TORUK back now, or would you have liked to see it in later films? Let me know in the comments below, and for more Avatar content, have a look at the rest of my channel. Until next time, have a fantastic day and stay safe.